Hey everyone, welcome back to the 443 Security Simplified. I'm your host, Mark Liberty, and joining me today is
Corey Holiday Knockreiner. We're going into a long weekend, Mark.
I think your dog just gave out an amazingly perfectly timed snore as you were.
How did you hear that? She's all the way over there. But yes, she sure did. And that would be.
She is excited for this episode.
I think she's giving me a sign that she doesn't want to hear me recording a podcast in the morning while she still sleeps. But deal with it, Callie. Security is important.
It is. And on today's episode, we're going to start with a little bit of drama in the security space. And we've got some opinions on it that I think are maybe a little less dramatic than what's been going on. Then we'll dive into the world of NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and they're pulling back from grading CVSS scores on CVEs. And we'll end with some fun little research that I was hoping would bankrupt Ticketmaster, but unfortunately is not going to.
It's too bad. So tickets are still going to be absorbently too pricey for what they're worth, thanks to that one third party.
Especially after this vulnerability was fixed. But with that,
the planet, AI will find another one.
Well, with that, let's go ahead and hack our way in. So starting, Corey, let's dive into some internet drama. Does that sound fun?
I love drama. Get out. Where's my tea? I need you to spill the tea.
So this all started a bit over a week ago when a former security operations analyst at Huntress made a pretty inflammatory LinkedIn post that was accusing Huntress of covering up an insider threat incident since December of 2025. They claimed that the incident would cause significant reputational damage to Huntress, and it continued to put clients at risk. In their post, they even shared their resignation letter that they sent on December 29th, where they said that their decision to leave was based on personal reasons and also due to a conflict of interest that arose from a discovery that on December 20th, 9 days before their resignation, another Huntress employee passed communications from U.S. law enforcement to a cyber criminal known as DevMan, who was actively and publicly targeting their family and them. So like this post came out, it came out following another one where they replied to like a Huntress post about being transparent with like a clown emoji. And it kicked off a big firestorm on social media, both on LinkedIn and on Reddit. There was a lot of speculation on like what was shared and how serious the insider threat accusation actually was. And it forced Huntress, and specifically Huntress's CEO, Kyle Hensloven, to publish a response on the Huntress corporate blog, as well as on Reddit too, with a bit more details. They started it by saying that Huntress had conducted multiple investigations and found no evidence of illegal conduct or an insider threat, and that their consultation with law enforcement also reached the same conclusion. And then they dove into like some limited information that they could share. They said they were being a bit, not as transparent because it involved employee privacy and law enforcement and stuff like that. But they did say that, first off, Huntress permits their threat researchers to engage with threat actors when it's beneficial for them, which makes sense. WatchGuard has a similar policy. We have a very strict don't fund cybercrime policy. But like for threat research, like we're on most of the forums as well to try and gain firsthand intelligence too. So that's not surprising. He went on to say they were aware of separate, questionable, long-term threat actor communications from both a current employee and this former employee that made the post. In one particular exchange, the current employee disclosed to the threat actor that law enforcement had reached out to them about the threat actor. They said that while the disclosure was not illegal, it did reflect poor judgment, which I think, pausing there, that's fair. Maybe. I mean, you could argue that sharing law enforcement communications about an investigation is bordering on obstruction of justice. But that would be pretty extreme for something relatively trivial, like talking to a threat actor and saying, hey, the FBI is asking about you.
Yeah, it certainly won't make the FBI happy, whatever it is, even if it's not illegal.
Yeah. So the post from Huntress' CEO went on to say that when it was first reported by the former employee, they investigated and consulted with law enforcement and ultimately just implemented stronger policies. After the former employee's post on LinkedIn last week, they did another investigation and so far haven't found any evidence. So basically, they're saying it's a big nothing burger that while it was probably poor judgment for the current employee to say, hey, the FBI is asking about you, it wasn't strictly illegal and they don't consider it. Yeah. But go ahead.
I was just basically going to say, yeah, she kind of did a silly thing.
Yep. But this isn't where the story ends. So that former employee, Mr. Ben F., made another post just this last Tuesday with some facts, or I guess like stated facts from them. There's no corroboration for it. But they said that the FBI reached out to the Huntress employee to gather intel on DevMan. The employee immediately forwarded the exact FBI communications to the threat actor, including screenshots of the FBI agent names. She informed DevMan that law enforcement was actively looking into them and that they also, the employee, refused to cooperate with the FBI in this case. One important thing to note, I think both of these folks were based in the United Kingdom. So while Huntress is, I think they're an American company.
Yeah, they are US-based.
Yeah, these two employees were not.
And then they little detail that they threw out a she there, like kind of adding more wood to the fire of people speculating who the insider might be.
Correct. And they followed it up with a comment at the end of it, like replying to their own post, explaining why they cared so much about this. They said that before the incident, DevMan was carrying out a campaign of death threats against Ben and his family. There were claims about people being sent to dismember his family. There were even like paid OS intelligence investigations into Ben from this threat actor that he found out about because the threat actor ended up not paying them. And so they went to like arbitration on the cybercrime forum that he was doing it. So like, I think my main takeaway from this is it just like sucks for everyone involved. I'm sympathetic to Ben, and I'm also sympathetic to Huntress that the end result of this, it's not like illegal, it's just sketchy. But I can see why this former employee is really upset. Like if I was a security operations analyst and I was working with a threat actor that was now sending death threats to me and my family, and then one of my employees did something that seemed like they were trying to help that threat actor, or at least like, I mean, help, but while maintaining a relationship, I'd be pretty pissed off too. And I can see why they would
the company. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I kind of agree there. To be honest, I don't know if it's, I mean, it is now publicly aired drama, though. I don't know how it really affects their customers or folks like that. But exactly what you say, Ben, if he is getting death threats, that has to be scary. And you would want your company to help you, catch and FBI catch that guy.
Yeah.
But it seems like he's overstating. I don't know if he's overstating. I do think he's getting a little too, like at the end of the day, I don't think they're mucked up their total investigation with DevMan or are not still going after the guy. Although at this point, DevMan, I mean, the drama's done nothing but benefit the threat actor. That's kind of the bad thing is now DevMan's not the topic. All of this is out in the open and DevMan knows not to interact probably with this team any longer. So I don't think it really helps in the scheme of things.
And I don't think that this would cause significant reputational harm to Huntress. I don't think it has. I don't think it necessarily puts their clients at risk either. It just seems like, I don't know, actually exactly like their CEO, Kyle, said, like there's just poor judgment all around in this from maybe multiple people as well, too. So
I do wish my main takeaway this employee should have some sort of punishment. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
What was your main takeaway, Mark?
Main takeaway is that it's drama, but I don't think this is as big of drama like to anyone other than Ben. Like if I was in his shoes, I would still be freaking out about some of the threats he was receiving. So I am sympathetic.
I would, like if I were, we don't know the story about why this woman disclosed what she did. But it could have been, what if they were guided by the FBI to kind of string him along? But for whatever the reason, it doesn't sound like that was the case, and it does sound a little bit like she was protecting him being DevMan. So I do think internally, it's like, I hope that Huntress is investigating this and taking some sort of action on the poor judgment of what was shared with I'd still love the story, to hear the story around why she did that. Well, it's not here nor there, but they should definitely take action in some way privately on that. But yeah, I agree with you. Poor judgment, fun drama. We got a little tea with our morning 443 podcast.
Yep. And unlike other stories, I feel like this probably is the end of it. There's not a whole lot more to get out of it. That's some good news, though, by the way. Like, I guess some silver lining. There was another follow-up comment from this former employee where they said even though they felt like they weren't getting a lot of support from their coworkers and their employer, they were getting support from the United Kingdom law enforcement, where like as soon as the threat started, they had immediate support from them. There was like protection from them for their family. And so the UK government was taking it very seriously, it's good to hear. I'm glad that they weren't like totally high and dry. But I guess that is like a operational hazard of being in security and working with threat actors, is like most times it's probably a bluff from them. But at the same time, it's pretty scary if you're working with hardened criminals that maybe aren't afraid to do really scary, sketchy crap. But anyways, moving on to the next story. So historically, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, has been a very active member of the CVE program. Like if you think back, probably 5 years ago, Corey, maybe a decade ago, it felt like every CVE that would show up on MITRE.org would also show up in the National Vulnerability Database, which is maintained by NIST. Almost all of them had a CVSS score attached to them, done by NIST. And while they weren't always accurate, because NIST was operating just off of like the title and description from the vulnerability and not intimate knowledge
information.
Yeah. It was at least something and could help at least somewhat triage if like the vendor themselves didn't put a CVSS score on it. But if you haven't noticed, like the volume of vulnerabilities that are being discovered and disclosed every day is just skyrocketing across the board.
Huh? Who could have predicted that? I wonder why.
Exactly. And it's caused a real problem at like CISA and NIST at like trying to enrich these vulnerabilities and keep providing the service they used to. And so back in April, NIST even announced they were going to dramatically cut back on the number of CVEs that were receiving enrichment. They were going to prioritize flaws that were under active exploitation, or ones that are in products that are used by the federal government. And so I saw a post on Dark Reading just the other day where some researchers at another vulnerability management company, Valorian, analyzed all 13,000 CVEs that were published to the National Vulnerability Database since April, since that announcement, and just went over some interesting stats. But then like I thought there was some good just discussion points in here too. It's like of those 13,000 CVEs, 8.3 thousand of them were prioritized by NIST for enrichment, but only 6.7 thousand were actually enriched. But pausing there, 6,500 vulnerabilities in 2 months is a lot still. Even if it's not all of them, not even half of them, that's still a ton and pretty impressive in my opinion. But so of those,
I'm curious, by the way, I'm alluding that AI is helping release more vulnerabilities a month, but what we're basically talking about is it sounds like NIST is not able to keep up with enriching data, but why not move to AI? I mean, it seems like an ideal problem to use AI. I'll say we even have a cool project in our SOC where we automate enrichment of incidents with AI.
Yeah. Absolutely. It is extremely powerful. And interesting.
I mean, if they're losing folks anyways, either way, it sounds like they're not keeping up.
Yep. Of those 6.7 thousand or whatever that are being enriched, only 2.6 thousand of them actually got a CVSS vulnerability severity score for them. And their takeaway, so the company that did this analysis, I thought was worthy of talking about, where they said that like without a CVSS score from NIST, users are going to have to rely on the certified numbering authorities themselves, which is usually the vendor of the product, but it can sometimes be the person that discovered it or at least the organization that coordinated the response. But without NIST as an independent body, you have to rely on either the vendors, which are incentivized to lower the severity or keep it down, or the person that discovered it, who's incentivized to increase the severity for bigger bounty payouts or more clout on the internet. And losing that independent grading is an issue. But like in the second breath, they talked about how even NIST's grading was inaccurate in some cases too. They pointed out some disagreements with things like the attack complexity vector or whether user interaction or what levels of permissions were required to exploit it. So even NIST isn't perfect, which makes sense because NIST is operating with just public information and not like source code. But like, I thought it's worth talking about this issue that we have in the industry right now. Speaking as like someone that helps run WatchGuard's certified numbering authority process to issue CVEs and grade CVSS. Sometimes it feels a bit like an art form even doing CVSS versus like a true data-driven thing, just because you're basically distilling what can be a very complex issue down into a couple of very basic like metrics that crank out a 0 through 10 score of like the worst case scenario severity. So I'm not like, I understand when there's concerns about like inaccuracy in CVSS scoring, but it's not meant to be like a perfectly accurate number grading the true risk of a vulnerability. Even not all 10 out of 10s are even the same, so to speak.
You might know better than I, since you tend to go through the flow chart to give it our vulnerabilities a score. But I feel like the inaccuracies are not that huge either. Like I've seen us internally change our scores from a researcher, and it goes from like a 9.8 to a 9.3 because of a little detail we thought was important. So accuracy is important to these, but I feel like if the vendor and or third party is following the flow chart a little, it's close enough. To me, a 9.8 or a 9.3 are ultimately the same thing as far as true impact. I do love, I mean, we're a vendor. We're trying to be transparent with our, usage of CVEs and CVS. We publish CVEs ourselves because we are a CNA or CNE. But I think it's nice to have a third party, especially an authoritative like government, hopefully, that you trust, checking on all this. So the fact that they're not going to be doing this as much, doesn't necessarily help the industry. I would like to hope that most vendors are doing a good job of this on their own, but the whole reason we have third parties is sometimes the vendors don't do it, or sometimes there's negligence. So it does suck to hear that they're going to be participating less or scaling it back.
There is a whole part of the CVE system that supports like third parties adding enrichment. It doesn't have to just be NIST or CISA. Like really anyone as a part of the system can add their own enrichment to any CVE. It's like an entire like field in the JSON schema for it. So like when we publish one, we add our own, where it's the vendor provided one, which in theory should be the most accurate as long as they're not biased, which we're not. But like other people could pick up the slack and go enrich them themselves too. Like other international enforcement agencies or international authorities could help too. And they're not currently. NIST is still cranking out most of them.
Sounds like an AI project for an international global team.
I think this is a great application for AI because the whole program it still feels a bit shaky. Like we almost lost the CVE services last year when MITRE had their funding cut until the literal 11th hour. So there's a genuine risk. Like there's some instability in here and something that's still very important. Like having CVE numbers for vulnerabilities is very helpful for us as defenders to have just that common language when we're trying to discuss a specific issue.
And it's not just discussing, it's automated systems, it's vulnerability management. It's how all of our defense is looking for these flaws, fixing them, tracking that we fix them, pen testing against them. If you have think of malware naming conventions among vendors. No one agrees. You end up with 20 different names for a group or a malware or a nation state threat actor. CVEs are what make different types of security systems that have to deal with vulnerabilities. However they do that, whether it's vulnerability assessment or pen testing, work. So I think they're programmatically important too.
Yep, I agree. So I think this is an area that we need some more help in. And AI, like you said, is a great application to help with automated enrichment. And it is getting more accurate every single day, too.
For one, even though I like the United States, I hope still for a while to come. And yay, the fourth coming soon for everybody. I like what you're right. I feel like this should be some sort of international organization to not have any sort of country bias. And so that if one country decides not to focus on the same things because of leadership, we still have some international body that helps run this the way we try to with ICANN and DNS and some other things.
Yep. And I think Europe is, well, they're not trying to create that international one. They are creating a European only one that right now clones CVEs from the US run program into the European vulnerability database.
That's good. But, it's at least international.
Yeah, at least there's a backup in case MITRE drops off the face of the earth this year by losing funding again.
MITRE's just going to move to another country. They're too good to drop off the face of the earth, but at this point, they're probably getting irritated with their rich daddy.
Yes, they're probably getting irritated with their rich daddy. Moving on to the last story for today. So a security researcher named Ian Carroll published an interesting blog post just this last Wednesday describing a vulnerability that he discovered in Frontgate Tickets, which is a subsidiary for Live Nation and Ticketmaster that handles ticketing and payments for like big festivals. Think like Bonnaroo and the Electronic Daisy Carnival in Vegas and Outside Lands and other EDM festivals are big customers of it. But the notable thing is this is a vulnerability he discovered, or at least like weaponized, largely thanks to Claude Code and Opus 4.7, I think it was. So he starts by describing like these APIs that are used for both the consumer apps as well as infrastructure at venues. So think like when you buy a ticket, your mobile app is communicating with an API. When you go scan the ticket at the event, the scanner is communicating with the API. If someone needs to like reissue a ticket or comp a ticket, it's another API endpoint. So he was doing analysis of this to just look for vulnerabilities and wasn't having a lot of success on the consumer side. But he noticed that when the path contained the word device for his API requests, he was getting a unique error message that the device UID, universal ID parameter was missing. And so this led him to start investigating, like, what is this device UID parameter? And might I be able to mess with it? And ultimately, he found evidence that there was a potential SQL injection vulnerability in here.
Oh, no, Mark. That can't be true. I've had developers tell me SQL injection is from like the 80s and 90s. That doesn't exist anymore. Their engineers are too smart. SQL injection's old, Mark. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Well, sarcasm aside, unfortunately, it is still very much around. And this one, like, he found it, like the evidence of it pretty easily. Basically found like a device UID of 12345, returned a success message, but a device UID of 12345 and then a single quote on the end caused it to hang, which indicates that it was breaking the SQL request by just directly inputting that quote, causing
quote is like a reserved character in SQL. So right away, you can do some fun things.
Yep. So they spent the next bit of time like hammering away, trying to actually weaponize the potential SQL injection. But the API has a web application firewall in front of it. And all of his requests were getting filtered out or blocked by that firewall. And they were about to give up, and they decided to throw it at Claude Code running Opus. and see what it could do. And he said it very quickly noticed that the web application firewall was only sanitizing like the outer SQL command. And if he nested the actual injection inside there, then it would bypass the WAF and would run on the endpoint. So they found a way to like.
This reminds me of a network fragmentation attack, and I mean, not exactly the same, but it's just splitting something up into pieces so that you don't see it all together if you're a security control.
It's like putting a decoy around what you're actually trying to sneak in. And so the WAF like detects and removes the decoy, but allows the actual bad payload inside through into the back system. But so the next step was they needed to find what's called a Boolean oracle, basically some way to tell whether their statement was returning true or false. And they could basically use that to extract data. Like think of if you had a table with like a password in it in plain text, which hopefully they don't, but imagine they did. You could have a command that says, if the first letter of the password is P, then return true, otherwise return false. And you could use that to suss out individual characters of the password and ultimately extract the entire thing based off true and false responses from it. They found was there's a couple tables that they could read and return data out of based off whether their command was true or false. Like it literally would return one string of text. I think it was like, if you scroll up just a little bit, the word MC70023 if it was true, and then Intellix upload if it was false. So that was their upload, or their oracle rather, and it would let them query tables in the database to return data. So the final step was, how do I weaponize this into something that actually matters? They went and looked and found different table names in there. They found one that made a really interesting target called reset_token. Basically, if you go and reset your password or issue a password reset request, it generates a token and stores it in this database, which the user gets a copy of it from their email. When they click that link, validates the token is correct, and then lets them reset their password. They found is they could issue a password reset for an administrator account, scrape it out of the database using their SQL injection attack, and then use that token to take over the account, which got them into the admin portal, which gave them all sorts of access, including like managing inventory and actual events, pricing, or they found they could comp tickets, basically issue free tickets for any event that they wanted to in there. Now, this is where they stopped. They said they didn't actually give themselves free Bonnaroo tickets. Now that they validated the impact of the vulnerability, they reported it to Frontgate. They did note they couldn't find a public security report mailbox, but they just guessed it was probably security at frontgatetickets.com or whatever. And notably, Frontgate actually fixed it within 24 hours.
Super fast.
Yeah.
I like to say they're like super security conscious for good reasons, but I feel like it's more about the greed of you can't have those cheap tickets being comped to everyone.
Exactly.
But I'm being a sarcastic dork. But yes, good job, Frontgate. Oh, that is a nice response.
It is a good response. So while the vulnerability is like interesting and it's the fun idea to be able to give yourself free tickets for Ticketmaster run events, I think the really interesting thing here is like using Claude for that last mile when you get stuck as a researcher, and it very quickly finding a way to weaponize this vulnerability and turn it into a working proof of concept exploit.
Yeah, that's what the Wired article that I think we first brought us to this story focused on. And I don't think it's a surprise to you and I. We've been talking about this, Mark, how AI is going to speed it up, but it's a really good example. I guess it's also a decent example that it's not just AI. We think agentic, fully automated attacks can happen too, but we're still in state where you're just having the AI assistant with a human hacker, finding a flaw, realizing you can't exploit it because of security systems, but using AI to help find bypasses for that. It's just a good example of how AI is going to be hand in hand used, hopefully mostly for the good, with things like Glasswing and OpenAI's Daybreak for us all to help find these flaws as good guys and fix them, but easily can be leveraged for the bad. So good find by this guy, but I now worry about all the criminal threat actors having their little AI buddy helping them out.
And I worry about it for like smaller or at least less mature companies too. Like at WatchGuard, we've got a really mature product security team. We are using these tools for vulnerability discovery and validation too. But like we know that researchers and threat actors are using them maliciously, and companies with important software that maybe don't have the resources like WatchGuard to participate in these programs and to gain access to the latest and greatest frontier models, like they're going to be a prime target for potentially very damaging vulnerability discoveries and disclosure. I would like to see from like the AI labs maybe some more like philanthropy around that. I know they do some like free credits for like open source projects and stuff like that, but we need to find a way to lift the entire tide of cybersecurity for all organizations.
Absolutely agree.
This is absolutely the most exciting time to be in cybersecurity, if I do say so. It's moving so damn fast and so many interesting things that I don't know about you, Corey, but I've totally reinvigorated within the last like 6 months, with just
it's exciting.
How insane it's going.
Someone accountable to keep our company secure. It's definitely exciting. Exciting can go lots of different ways. You and I will not be bored for the next few years.
No, we will not, until we get Mr. Claude to just totally replace both of us, and then we'll probably get a little bored when we run out of stuff to do as a human. I don't know, maybe at that point we'll sign up for one of those
or Lego sets,
meat bag delivery services.
Robot building my Lego. Yeah.
AI can pry my Legos out of my cold dead hands. That's for sure.
It's going to chew your food for you soon. It'll baby bird you.
I do not subscribe to this future.
Robots baby birding Wally people and fat Wally people in big old floating wheelchairs. Welcome to the future.
No, thank you. You just killed my buzz. Thanks, Corey.
You're welcome. I'm good at least one thing.
God. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening. As always, if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. If you have any questions on today's topics or suggestions for future episode topics, please reach out to us. I'm on Blue Sky at itsmark.me. Corey's at Second Ept. We're both on LinkedIn. You can probably find us pretty easily. And we're on Instagram at watchguard_technologies. Thanks again for listening, and you will hear from us next week.
And if you're in the U.S., enjoy the 4th of July, y'all.
Woo, America.
America.